Doug, Fred, Christina, Kathy, Ben, Brian, Joan, and Peter. Ben would not be participating in Still Point. So Linda, if you want to participate, you can do that much for Still Point.
Come back, Linda, come back. We
No.
miss you.
I haven't left. I've just muted myself when I was going to listen.
Okay. So anyway, we have two things on the agenda. One of them is very short. That's 9 Beecher Park. We have to talk about the railings and making sure the plans are now what we need them to be so we can vote to approve them and they can go build the thing. Then we have Still Point, and we are going to finish post-public hearing LUPC tonight so that it can be scheduled for deliberation. So let's start with Rick. Wait a second, who's that guy? Some people grow them, some people shave them off, Mr. Salt. Anyway.
Different look today, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Tell us about this Beecher Park thing.
Sure thing. We're returning to DRI 707, which is 9 Beecher Park. You folks approved the lion's share of that proposed rebuild when last we met, with one item remaining for this meeting, which was a railing. And the architect and his team have worked, or at least consulted, with a member of the Historical Society and a member of the LUPC, and arrived at a new design for that railing. And I'm going to put that up right now for your folks' consideration. This is the new railing. The previous railing, which I have, if you folks want to see for reference, had a lateral member here. This railing now has full vertical balustrades or stiles or whatever these balusters. And that was the primary issue last time. I guess I'll turn it over to Mr. Sullivan to articulate a little more on what may go into this new design.
Sounds good. Go ahead, Chuck.
Well, the Callahans were fine with eliminating that mid rail, so we eliminated the mid rail and sent that over to Fred and Barbara, and they were fine with it. So that's what's in front of you now.
And you added the notes that we discussed last time. So.
We did. That's also on that sheet, and Fred reviewed those, and I believe Barbara did too, but to his satisfaction. And I thought the material list went out on Friday, but I just sent that to Rich and Fred and Barbara, and added the notes to that also. So that file should be complete.
Okay.
Coming right up, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, why don't you show the material list, and if any commissioners have comments, they can make them, and then we can bring this to a conclusion, hopefully.
Can you folks all see that clearly?
You better scroll it down a little bit. I don't think you got to there. There's the trimming gable stuff. At the risk of opening Pandora's box, do you have any update on the acre use of the acre?
I haven't heard back from them.
Okay. Any comments from commissioners? Ben?
Yeah, I just raised the same concern with the acre being a PVC based siding, and I don't know if others would support, but I would make a condition if people are willing to support it, not to use that material or any PVC based material.
Well, we have to approve the material list. So if you're suggesting that, I think that has to be, if there's some kind of groundswell for support for that, you could make it into a motion and we can address it. Otherwise, we can just wrap this up. Does anyone, any commissioner, feel strongly enough to support that? Carol, you can, I don't know, can Carol support? Yeah, Carol can. Fred, go ahead.
I would move that we approve this, the rest of these, the details and the list as submitted.
Second,
Okay. Other than Ben and Carol, I'm not seeing a great deal of support to eliminate acre, but Ben, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to point out, that we made them go back and revise a fairly insignificant railing detail that probably has very little regional impact. And maybe you can make a narrow argument around historic preservation, but remember, we let them tear down the historic house and they're building a new house. And here we have a known pollutant that we're willing to overlook. And so I think we need to think long and hard about what our priorities are. If the health and safety of the island is a priority, it's not railing details that's going to get us there. It's protecting against the use of materials that are polluting our environment. That material will be chopped on the job site. All of the dust from that is not wood dust, it's plastic dust. And, it's something that we need to pay attention to. The firefighters are certainly paying attention to it. Any building that has these types of materials on it is a hazardous site for them to work around if it ever catches on fire. There's numerous reasons for not using this material, and there's, excuse me, there's plenty of other options.
Okay, well, the three other commissioners have their hands up. I'm going to hear from them and then bring this, unless there's a strong reason, bring it to a vote. Kathy?
Carol actually had her hand up before.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Carol. You have to unmute.
Thank you. I tend to agree with Ben. If we're really here to protect the island and its future, we do have to look into these toxic, I'm not even going to say chemicals, they're toxic chemicals that we need to eliminate for the sake of our future. So that's why I support Ben in no PVC if we can help it. I mean, I feel strongly about it, and that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Kathy, then Brian, then Christina.
So I wanted to ask Ben and Chuck, because I'm just naive about this. I don't mean that I don't understand what everybody has said, but the choices, like, why do you choose this? Is there something, is there expense or supply, or like, what is it about this that leads? Clearly, Chuck, this is your first choice. If you found out that it was not as bad as we think it is, help me understand that.
So it's mainly ease of maintenance, I would say, these synthetic products. It's a synthetic product. So there's different types of PVC. AZAC is a synthetic product. This product is 50% rice pulp. So it's better than just a straight PVC trim like AZAC. For a while, we were using boral, which is a cementitious product. It's a byproduct of burning coal. It's made from fly ash. It's difficult to work with. It's brittle. It's heavy. So most contractors prefer to not work with that material. So this is a product that's been introduced to us. It's been approved by both the CCHDC and the Edgartown Historic District for certain products. It's not 100% PVC. It's better than just, again, just a straight PVC product. None of these products are perfect. Is wood a better material to use? Maybe environmentally, I don't know. You could argue both sides of it. It certainly requires a lot of paint every year or two to keep up with that. So that's not perfect. There's environmental consequences of doing that. This product is, what I see is it's not perfect, but it's better than a lot of other choices. So You know, this is what was approved. It's a little bit frustrating for me and the Callahans, as this was approved by the board, and this is, you know, for what was going to be, go back to the LUPC for a couple details, has turned into a 4-hour process and more than that for our time being put in and spent on this. So, you know, to go back and revisit all these things, every one of these things at this point, it has been a little bit frustrating, but, you know, so that's where we are. And that's why.
So it
this
was
process has
approved?
been-
We did approve it? Have I missed that?
Well, Rich said you didn't have the material list. I had the material list as being submitted to you guys, but you know, with the acre trim board on there.
Yeah.
That was from October, I believe the date was on that.
The problem is that there's a condition that land use planning has to approve the plans and the material list to make, to assure that they are consistent with what we voted on. So I don't know whether the material list was there or not.
It's not in the record.
What?
It's
Pardon?
not on the, it's not on the MVC website, which is our public record.
Okay. Brian, then Christina, and then I think it's time to vote on this, unless somebody
Well,
really needs to talk about it.
well, we have to make our decision based upon the record, and I don't think there was any testimony in the record that said PVC was unacceptable, so I don't know why we would now at this late stage make a decision that it was unacceptable without any testimony regarding that.
Christina?
Well, in response to Brian's concern, I share it, but if we said the LUPC had to approve the materials list, I think that gives us a fair opportunity to discuss it. I'm concerned that if we, no, Chuck, you've given us a couple of alternatives which sound worse than this one. The coal dust one took my fancy, like, sure. Is there any sign in the materials engineering development community, you know, that there will be better than the one you're offering, this being better than the older one?
Are there, I don't understand the question. Are there other products? Are you asking?
No, do you think that there will be other products?
I would hope so. I mean, even,
Yeah.
I mean, there's new products all the time coming out. You know, again, this is, we've been using this for only a couple of years. Prior to that, we had been using the boral, which is the cementitious product. You know, and before that, really the choices were limited to two different, you know,
Right,
PVC products. So,
yeah,
you know, hopefully they'll come out with, you know, some other alternatives that are environmentally better.
yeah. No, I know you can't say they will. There's one lurking, you know, ready next year. But I'm glad that your sense is that they're developing less environmentally bad products.
Yeah, I mean,
Thanks.
the industry's leaning that way. You know, everyone's looking for better products and make buildings as carbon neutral as they can and as environmentally clean as they can. But you know, it's a balance between, you know, what works and what lasts and what holds paint and what doesn't move around too much in the sun. And so, you know, this one isn't perfect, but I don't know of one that is perfect.
No, I understand.
Well, that's for the
Thanks.
future anyway, because we're dealing with approving a set of plans so they can get a building permit. Joan is next because she hasn't spoken on this before, and then Ben, you will get the last word and we will vote. Go ahead, Joan.
I think that if our charge is to review the list to make sure it's consistent with the decision, it seems to me, is either approved it if it was part of the record or was silent on it. And I would say that there's not, if it strikes me, I'm concerned that there's not any like evidence which would allow us to do this. Moreover, I'm concerned that while this may be unhealthful, and I'm completely sympathetic, Ben, that's not a holistic view of the benefits and detriments of alternatives. So I'm a little bit apprehensive about stepping over that line at this moment. And lastly, I would say we don't have open slather in demolitions to, not that we have open slather anywhere, but we are a bit more limited with demolitions as to the kind of conditions that we can impose. And I, on balance, for those reasons, even though Ben, as I said, I totally get the health issues, I just feel like we've got to approve it. That's a sad state, but I feel like that's true.
Okay, Ben.
Yeah, I would vigorously disagree with that assessment, Joan. We were tasked with approving a materials list, and I'm not sure what the point of that is if we're not going to look at the materials being proposed. This never made it into the record. If it had, I would have brought it up at the time. We don't have to wait for another option. There are options out there that are safer than this. They're wood-based. And if you're worried about, the paint of wood, it's not every 1 to 2 years, Chuck. I mean, please, paint lasts a lot longer than 1 to 2 years. So say you have to paint every 1 to 2 years is just being disingenuous.
No, it's not, Ben. I mean,
it's my moment to say something. I'm refuting what you said. You just said that you have to paint every 1 to 2 years if it's wood siding, and that's not true. And there are plenty of wood products that aren't just basic wood. There's fortified, carbonized, silica-based wood preservatives that are environmentally friendly. And using wood that's farmed is a method of carbon sequestration. So we don't have to wait for science to come up with some alternative product. They're available. PVC is a horrible, horrible product. It won't be more than a few years before it's being classified as a hazardous waste product that is going to be produced on job sites all over the vineyard. This stuff is being used regularly on jobs all across the vineyard. If we knew the weight of the PVC that is being, put into our built environment on the island, I think people would struggle to wonder why we haven't done something sooner. And here we have an opportunity.
Okay, it comes for a vote. The motion is to approve the materials list and the plans that have been submitted. The people who are eligible are me, Fred, Christina, Kathy, Ben, Brian, Joan, and Peter. That's 8. Carol, unfortunately, you would be the 9th, and Linda is observing for this one. So all in favor, kindly raise your hand so that I can see it and count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I count 6 in favor. All opposed, please raise your hand. 1. There should be 1 more. No, Carol can't.
What? Are you
I think you didn't count Peter.
Peter.
Yeah, you didn't count Peter.
Oppose, or I'm sorry, Peter, were you in favor or opposed? I did miss you. If you're in favor, put your thumbs up and then I'll know.
Yeah, it's 7-1 then, Doug.
So it's 7-1 approving it. Okay, land use planning has approved the plan and material list submitted, and you have completed that condition, Chuck. And
Right.
I apologize that it took 21 minutes and I predicted 10 and hoped for 90 seconds.
Thank you all for your time. I
It's
appreciate
okay,
it.
Thanks.
but it was
Can I just-
a worthwhile conversation.
Could I just,
Kathy.
could we, just for the future, so we don't bump into this again, could we have a list of approved things from whomever, from Alex or Rich or Ben, or, I mean, let's get something that we're using so everybody knows when they come in, like our plant list. So we're not sort of putting somebody in an uncomfortable position in the last minute and feeling like we're not going to win either way, really.
Well, that would require, I think, the development of a policy that we would vote on so that people like Chuck would know ahead of time if he's got to come here, what he's got to deal with. And until we do that, you know, it's more ad hoc like this, and it causes a lot of agita by applicants. So
Maybe put it on our list of,
Things to do. I love the idea, Kathy.
yeah, it's a good idea. And I'm sure our chair will appoint a committee to deal with it, right, Chair?
Right, and I want to say that the absence of a list makes it difficult to stick by an ad hoc, albeit perfectly rational motion or effort. Okay, got it.
Okay. All right, the other item on the agenda, and we will use whatever time is necessary that's left to resolve it, is Still
Ben.
Point. This is the post-public hearing review for Still Point. Alex this is one of his legacy.
I just want to say Ben has recused himself, so
Yeah, I know that.
Carol or whoever is the ninth person in can join.
It's, no, I
Carol.
believe it's, yeah, Linda said she was going to observe, so no, Carol can't participate because I don't believe she was at all the public hearings. So
I
she-
was at all the public hearings, although for Still Point, I made public comment.
Yeah,
I
that's
believe.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you cannot
Yeah,
participate. And there were some public hearings that occurred before you were a member of the commission too.
Yeah, we did have some public hearings in December. We
Right.
did.
So the people who are eligible are Doug, Fred, Christina, Kathy, Brian, Joan, Peter, and Linda.
Okay, go ahead, Doug.
That should be 8. Okay, so last time on the 20th, we reviewed all of the possible conditions and possible offers. We spent most of our time on condition 1, which is addressing number of attendees and number of events. And the applicant was going to clarify its offer on that. We did not get the benefits and detriments. So what we need to do tonight is see if we can reach a consensus on a recommendation on condition 1 and see whether we can recommend any other conditions to the full commission, review the benefits and detriments. And as we always do, hopefully make a recommendation to approve, deny, or approve with conditions. So, Alex, would you tell us first what has occurred in the last 14 days?
We do have some new information in the record. We had, after the LUPC meeting last month, asked the applicant to provide some kind of financial pro forma indicating the minimum number and sizes of events in order to succeed at their mission in the first 2 or 3 years. The applicant responded to that with some information, not necessarily a pro forma, but some information stating, just their rationale for needing the events. And that a sort of critical mass of events is required in order to get the kind of donors that they're hoping for. So we do have some numbers there we'll look at in a minute. We had some clarification from the West Chisbury building inspector about the distance of the new Poly Hill housing from the Still Point lot line, which is about 100 feet. Updated offers and conditions, which we'll look at today. Also, about 8 new letters in the record. These cover a range of topics. Some of these people have also commented previously. There were a couple of requests for traffic counters at the entrance to Still Point for commission staff to monitor the traffic in and out over some period of time. It looks like from our traffic staff perspective that wouldn't be feasible at this time. We only have a limited number of traffic counters, and I believe all of those will be employed this season as we update the regional transportation plan and other transportation projects going on. So at least for staff to do that at this point would probably not be feasible. Other comments focus, you know, on various parts of the commission review process. Reiteration of concerns about intensity of use, traffic, noise, and lighting, and other things. This is all on the record. So the applicant, in their response to that question I went through just a minute ago, also offered a revised version of how they would deal with the frequency and number of events for different size events. We'll look at this in the review of possible conditions and offers as well. This essentially aligns, you know, in concept with what the possible condition would be, with some changes that we'll look at in red. The applicant provided a table, summarizing their offer in terms of the size, frequency, and number of events. So this covers the number of proposed events per week, per year, the maximum number of people for that size event. And this is based on a 48-week year. The applicant has clarified that there will be the still point will be closed for 4 weeks in the off season. I don't believe there are specific dates for that, but that's a new part of the proposal. So the when we asked them to provide some indication of what the minimum number of people using the nonprofit per year would be in order for them to succeed at their mission, the response was that at this point, looking forward, they would anticipate if they could attract about 38,000 people per year, that would be enough to create what they would see as a vital educational space to attract donors. So their offer, which we'll go through, would allow up to about 50,000 people per year on the site over the entire year at different size events. So that's obviously more than 38,000, but they've also stated that looking at that 50,000, you know, about 75% of that, would be 38,000. So they, you know, they're looking at achieving at least 75% of this total figure. They've also offered to not exceed 43,000 attendees per year, which, you know, the commission might see as conflicting with this number here. So that should be further clarified when we get to that point. But that's all the new information.
Okay, since this is post-public hearing land use planning, I should clarify what we do here, which is the commissioners discuss offers, conditions, benefits, and detriments. It is not an opportunity for the public or the applicant to have input. We can ask the applicant for clarification of an offer, but beyond that, this is really a meeting of commissioners that the applicant and the public are certainly invited to observe. Now, let's see if we can get condition 1. Why don't you put their offer up again? Is it possible to put that up next to R1A, B, and C? There you go. Thank you. So, to me, it seems like both we and the applicant are parsing this an awful lot. And I'm wondering if it really matters how many events the applicant has, small events under 35. What seems to me to be important is larger events, which could have a greater impact on abutters and on the environment. You know, I'd like to see it pared down a little bit. I also don't know that it makes any difference whether an event is mission-based or off-mission. But as in terms of regional impact and in terms of impact on the environment and on abutters. So I think we should think about whether there's a way to make this a little clearer and less complicated. It's not like we're gonna have somebody standing out there at the entrance with a clicker, trying to figure out what's going on. Joan and then Linda.
Okay, I'm probably the one initially who suggested that maybe we don't need to pay attention to what's on or off mission. And that my concern, the reason I said that was because I felt that it was the number of people traveling through the property that was the important issue. However, I have read some of the letters and I think maybe I was wrong. I think, and this is a question for commissioners. I wonder whether on-mission events, as Thomas initially described his mission, which was small workshops, small discussion groups, and things like that, whether in fact non-mission events may be more disruptive, and whether this is a question, I don't have a firm view, whether it would be meaningful to go back, not to limit the number of large and medium and small numbers of non-mission events, but to limit it to a fixed percentage. You can do whatever you want, you can have, fine, but non-mission events is limited to a fixed percentage. That it would be on the premise that those sort of events would tend to be less disruptive to the environment than mission events.
What percentage do you have in mind? Do you have a percentage in mind?
Well, I have my own little set of calculations as to what I think is meaningful, and my things, which is not too dissimilar from the applicants, would lead to about 1,200 events. If you did 10%, that's 120 non-mission. I don't know. That kind of sounds like a lot to me. So I started at 10 and I thought that's kind of a lot. But then I'm in the kind of camp that a lot of these things sound like a lot to me. So I'm interested to hear what others have to say.
You could say that if there is no limit on non-mission events, that might alter the benefits and detriments. If it was 90% non-mission events and 10% mission, that changes the calculus for benefits and detriments also. Let me see who was next. It was then Linda, and then after that, somebody's gonna have to.
Peter, Brian, Kathy.
Okay, good.
You said exactly what I was going to say, Doug, which is that it has to do with the benefits and detriments. It's pretty clear to me personally that the mission is a benefit. But not knowing what the non-mission events might be, I find it harder to conclude what the benefit and detriment is. So if the balance changed radically, if it was overwhelmingly non-mission events, that would affect the benefits of the proposal, which, by the way, I think these people are very sincere about their mission, and I want to make clear that I think their mission is an important benefit.
That would be a good reason to make sure that it's primarily mission. Okay, Peter, then Brian and Kathy. Go ahead, Peter.
Okay, not to beat the dead horse, but I really do think mission is key. I understand we don't want to parse, and that was really kind of, I think, my thought behind not saying, weddings or corporate events or trying to categorize what those, just either strictly mission or non-mission. I think we've all been, and the abutters were sold an idea of the quiet meditative mission purpose of the endeavor. And if I remember just from the previous spreadsheet and slide numbers, it looked like the numbers in their calculations of the center of gravity really was at 35 people and below, with only one, I think, event of any size during season and probably 2 off season. It felt like they were really trying to meet us, where we told them, keep the numbers down, keep your efforts on mission. And it seems like that's where they're headed. And at 75% occupancy, that's probably a pretty aggressive goal for a first year. I think if we're holding them to a 43% cap, which is below what their maximum is, and if they really look like they're focusing their events, and if we can somehow get a caveat of how much of this is mission, I'm guessing that the 35 and under is probably 90% mission, and the ones that are larger are probably not. Then yeah, you're probably looking at 1, 2, 6, that are in that category, which is below the 10% number that the chair had. So I think we're wobbling towards the same agreement here.
Do you really want
Mission,
to allow 6 events of 36 to 100 people a week?
is that per week? Oh, that is per week.
Yeah, that's
I'm
per
sorry.
week.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's just that to me, it seems.
Yeah, it's high. It's high.
Okay, I think Brian is next.
Yeah, I just feel like we're getting way into the weeds on these numbers. I think we need to take a more global look at this. And is this an appropriate location, and with obviously not appropriate zoning for an event venue? Whether the event is 10 people or 31 to 100 or however many times a week, is this an appropriate place for this type of business? I mean, we can discuss the numbers till the end of time, and no one, like you said, Doug, no one's gonna be out there with a clicker, and there's no enforcement, and no one's ever gonna figure out what exactly is going on there unless the town refers it back to us at some point in time because of complaints by neighbors or townspeople.
Yep.
I think we're just too far into the weeds, and we just need to look at a broader picture of this.
Okay, thank you. Kathy, then Fred.
So I'm going to be redundant here, but I wish we could figure out a phase 1 and a phase 2. And I agree, we're getting too much into the weeds. It's really hard to know even what we're talking about. But but if we could figure out, it's the neighborhood, it's the conservation land, it's, everybody just wants to make sure it's all balanced. If we could figure out a way, a sort of even 1 year, 6 months, whatever, depending on what the months are, just to see what we're talking about. It would be, we can't go backwards. That's our problem. If we do this and it's too much, we've given permission and we can't shrink it. So I wish we could figure out a way to grow it, and say, okay, let's do this. If it feels okay, we're fine. It's not a need to control as much as it is a need to balance neighborhood conservation, all that stuff.
I believe there is a proposed condition to review the data after 2 years. And that would give the applicant an opportunity to seek a modification, which is well within our authority. But you're right, we can't, if the genie gets out of the bottle, we can't stuff the genie back in. We're not allowed to do that. Fred and Tripp, I did see your hand. You'll be after Fred. Go ahead.
Okay, I guess my feeling is more in line with what you started talking about, Doug, is that and I agree with Brian. I think we're just way into the numbers here. And I mean, I have to think about the other venues and places on the island. I mean, if you think of the film center, the Tisbury Marketplace, how many times do they have sellouts? How many times do they really fill all of their seats? And I think we've all been to events. Some of them have been, up to capacity, but I wouldn't say that was probably more than 60% of the kind of events that happen on the island. it just seems to me if we're, we get alarmed by what this total number is. And even I think the applicant's assessment that they're only going to probably hit 75% of their numbers, I think also is perhaps a little high, especially in the first year or the first couple of years. And I'm not quite sure what to make of that, but I think I think we're just way too focused on the granular here, and we need to take a couple of steps back and think about this a little more broadly.
Trip.
Is
Yeah,
Trip-
thank you.
is Trip one of our participants?
Oh,
Yeah,
you know
I've never
what?
missed a meeting on this. I
Pointing
just
that
got out
out.
of the hospital. I got here as fast as I could. This is very important to me.
Well, and you will have an opportunity, no doubt, to discuss it at length during deliberation, Trip. But John has pointed out that, we already have a full 8, and if we have one more, we have a quorum of the full commission, which we can't have. I'm sorry. I know it's important to you, and I wish you could speak, but you can't.
Well, I'm sure that they would like me to speak too, but I can't. That's just great. Okay.
Yes, and as I just said, we will be having very lengthy deliberation on this, I'm quite sure, and you will have your opportunity to speak then. Those are the rules we have to follow. I'm sorry. Thank you. Anyway, so we got to come up with something here, and I'm going to propose something, and you can tear it apart or you can make other suggestions. I am okay with, and I would propose that the condition be events of 35 or fewer, no more than 5 in a day, but other than that, no limit. And for events of 36 to 100, no more than 3 a week. End of story. And that the applicant can have 20% of its events be off mission. And that I would also add that an event should be 10 or more attendees, because they could be having staff meetings with 6 or 7 people. And I don't think we should tighten them that much.
Doug, with respect, event is defined, or attendee is defined, they're there for an event, so shouldn't be covering, it wouldn't be a staff meeting. I think
It's an attendee includes staff, guests, and any other person.
Yeah, on the premises, on the premises for an event. So I think
But
that
an
would.
event is a gathering. Once you have 5 people, it's an event for a common purpose. If you have a staff meeting for a common purpose of 6 people, it's an event. That makes no sense to me.
A mission or non-mission event.
Well, anyway, that's what I'm suggesting. Linda?
I am in favor of the simplicity of what you have suggested. I must admit that it kind of boggles the mind when we're comparing all of these different formulas. So I would like to see your suggestion in writing. Is that what we're getting right now?
That looks like it.
I really think it has to be simplified. We'll all get a terrible headache and it'll be unenforceable if it's too complex.
Was there I didn't multiply it out, but on your earlier thing, Doug, you said no more than 750. I don't know whether if you multiplied that out, you'd get to 750 or not. I just don't know.
You would get more than 750.
Yeah, so
Okay, so maybe say no more than 800 of total events for the year, or 900 total events of the year. I mean, I want to give them an opportunity to have the critical mass of 37,000 because they, you know, they've represented that's what they need. But I haven't, you know, I played with the numbers a lot today, but I didn't. But 35.
Wait, did we say no more than 800 off-mission events per year?
No more. I would put a percentage. 20% of all events. And if you do that, you've got
No. Yeah, right. Okay.
Then I run into a problem about how clearly the mission is defined.
well, that's going to be a problem.
It was pretty good in the earlier drafts, I think.
If I just did the numbers on that, if they maxed out at 800 of the 35 attendees, I'm sorry, I think you come out to about 43,000. I'd have to do the math to be sure.
I don't want to complicate anything, but I do want to point out that this is their minimum to meet their suggested donation, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
which they're not going to do in year one, and I kind of doubt they'll be up that high in year two. I personally would be more comfortable if this was where they got to, but not where they started off at. In other words, something a little bit less large, but they can come back. That is just what I'm saying.
Okay, well, we've got a number of people with their hands up, and of course, I don't know who went first. So I'm going to ask Kathy first, and then Brian, then Fred.
Yeah, it was just to say, Doug, that I thought the simplicity of this really is much better. And there's no way really to keep track of it anyway, but that there should be, start off with simplicity and make sure we've got a look-see after 2 years to see how it's going.
I would disagree that there's no way to keep track of it. We have to rely on the good faith of the applicant to keep accurate records, and they can keep track of it.
Okay.
But we cannot do it ourselves, that's for sure. Brian, go ahead, then Fred, then Linda.
Yeah, I'll be short, but when we okay a 100-seat restaurant, we don't dictate to them what their menu needs to be so that we then control what their turnover is on those 100 seats. You know, if it's if they do breakfast 12 hours a day, they're going to turn over those seats a lot more than they are if they're doing fine dining. Like, I'm just not comfortable with dictating what number of people can come and go here. It's more about whether or not this business belongs in this space.
That would be the threshold issue for sure. But if we get past that, I think we do have to address what the impacts would be on the environment and on the abutting properties. Fred?
Yeah, Doug, I liked what you had said about exempting events for 10 and under, because I think that is important.
Linda?
Yeah, I'd like to see it simplified much as you have done. And I would like to say that I kind of disagree with Brian's use of the word business here. I don't see this as a business. I see this as a social service, really. And I think that that's critical when you're evaluating the benefits or detriments. I think if this were, a hardware store or something that we would all agree was a business, that I would be deeply uncomfortable with both the location and the numbers. But I think we're looking at a community facility here. I object to the word business, but
Well, if, I don't think they're gonna be, they didn't indicate they're gonna be giving free classes or free yoga classes or free women's boxing classes or free anything.
No, that,
Um,
yes, they're offering a space that is
Right.
You're absolutely right. They would, but I don't think it's fair to call it a business just because they're asking people to bear some of the expenses of this community facility.
Well,
I
whether,
just,
look,
it's the
whether it's a
word
business, whether it's a business that makes a profit or doesn't make a profit or is a nonprofit,
No.
it's
No.
a business. It's a business activity. It's a commercial activity.
No.
I just
Well,
don't
let's-
see
let's-
it that way.
let-
We can
let's-
go forward not seeing it the same way, but I don't see it that way.
Let's step back, and it's clear that Linda and Brian have a different view of the activity. And I think they both have a point here, and that will be important in assessing the benefits and detriments when we deliberate. Peter, you were next, and Jake, I see your hand up, and unless it's a clarification, I cannot call on you, but go ahead first, Peter. You have to unmute.
Okay, sorry about that. Regardless of what we call it, I think we have to look at it in terms of impact to abutters and the environment,
Yep,
right? Regardless of what, whether you take a dollar or not, the activity is going to be, the same.
Activity is a good word.
Yep.
And the impact to the abutters is going to be, regardless of what you want to call it.
Agree. It's
We have
just
to
that I
really
don't
be mindful of that. And as I've sat there and read all of the letters that came in, that's what, really hits me.
okay. Jake, what is the nature of what you want to say?
I just wanted to clarify something that Brian had raised, but I can clarify later as part of the things, but it's just a direct clarification.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you can start, and I may have to cut you off. Go ahead.
Please do. So we are offering pay what you can. That is the model, and that's why. So it's not a sort of charge for. It's not based on user fees. That's not our model. It's based on donation subsidizing. Often pay what you can, both in terms of those attending and those teaching, to reach the widest possible community. So that's the clarification.
That it was a clarification. Thank you. Fred?
I would ask that we take a vote on this revised 1A condition to kind of move things along here.
Okay. I have moved that we recommend 1A to the full commission. Is there a second? Fred, is that a second?
Second.
Okay, there is a second. Is there further discussion? Please no. Okay, all in favor, kindly raise your hand where Doug can see it. I can count it. 1,
No.
2,
I have a question, may I? Just for clarification.
yes.
In order to figure out the maximum number of people, I don't care whether they're going to get there. we need to know that they could get there. So I multiply 35 by 5.
35 times 5 times 365. No, times they're only open 48 weeks. So it's 35 times 5 times 48 times 7. Wow.
It's a big number.
Yeah, 58,800.
Alex, can you take down the thing so I can review when they vote?
Times.
Thank you.
Times 48. Yeah.
It's nice to have that up there for a moment. Let's just wait until we vote. I think you can take a vote now. I just thought it was important.
58,800, and that's not including the other 15,000 that would come from, wait a second, no, it's not, it's times 48. That 48 throws me.
While you're adding things,
Another
Jake,
14,000.
may I ask you, Jake, I understand your model, pay what you can, but when a third party comes to you and says, I would like to use your facility for XYZ, do they rent the facility or do they share the whatever the user can pay with you? I mean, To me,
Yeah,
that's
the model there is that they rent, and I think that falls under the events off mission.
Okay, but
I
I
can't
just wanted to
imagine
make
that. I think we're gonna be well under this 20% limit. I mean, we're limited by IRS things no matter what. There's also local zoning things, but we're limited by IRS just because it's a 501c3 anyway. There's no way we're gonna be that high. So that's great.
Now, I just did the math, and for one sub A, 35 attendees or fewer, no more than 5 in a day, if they're operating 48 weeks, the maximum would be 58,800. And for the subpart B, 3 a week for 48 weeks of up to 100 attendees would be 14,400. So the total potential would be 73,200 people.
This is incredible.
Yeah, it's not, that is an awful lot of flexibility. But like I said, I think the real environmental impact and the impact on abutters is the larger events, but I could be wrong. That could be too many. Maybe you need to put a cap of a total of 800 events instead of whatever the number is for the 35 attendees.
So the applicant has offered to not exceed 43,000.
Yeah, we could add
attendees.
that. The applicant has to, they're gonna have to coordinate what they're doing so that it never exceeds 43,000. If they get to September and they've got 43,000 people, they'd have to shut down. But that's their offer. Anyway.
That wouldn't necessarily conflict with this condition. We could have both.
Yeah, we could have both.
It could be D. You could make it D.
Yeah.
Got my hand up. I got my hand up.
I know you do. Go ahead, Linda.
I just want to point out that the way our conditions have worked for however many years we exist, we don't make them more restrictive after a couple of years.
I know.
And we have an applicant who's comfortable with the idea of our looking at this again in a couple of years. I would hope that we could be somewhat conservative with these numbers and then expand them in a couple of years if the track record shows that, rather than trap ourselves in a position where we've given them more than they've asked for. And we can't, I don't think we can take it back. I don't think it would stand muster in the courts if we did.
No, it would absolutely not.
So why don't we work with, I mean, I like your rough numbers, Doug, but maybe you and the applicant could get together and tighten it.
Maybe it should be, they had offered no more than 25 in a week for 35 or less. So if it was no more than 5 in a day and 25 in a week, you reduce the overall number down. It's still a big number. It's still, the total would be 56,000.
Right, but as long as we're being generally consistent with what they've offered, I think we should make it tight and look in a couple of years to expanding. I don't think they're going to get that kind of participation.
Well, you know what we could do?
I don't want to call it a business, but what a successful enterprise it would be if we hit those high numbers.
What we could do, since they've offered to put a cap on the total attendees, which would be up to them in their scheduling. If we put a tighter cap, they say they need 37,000 people a year to be able to reach critical mass. So we give them 38,000 attendees.
I'm absolutely fine with that. I just want to point out that we can't really crank it back in a couple of years.
Yep, and if we accept, we modified their proposal of 43,000. If they're hitting 38,000 and having to shut down in October, they're going to come in and seek a modification.
Yes, and
because
quite frankly, if they're coming in with those numbers with 80% of it being on mission, wow, what a marvelous impact on the community.
Procedurally, Doug, you have Fred's motion is on the floor, so
No, actually, it was my motion and Fred seconded
Fred
it.
seconded, okay.
Fred, we've now added D to that. What would you think, hypothetically, if we kept D in, but we changed it to 38,000 attendees, and I amended my motion, would you be willing to amend your second?
I would.
Okay, why don't we do that?
Okay, so the number will go to 38,000. Doug has amended his motion, Fred has seconded.
Right.
Okay, very good.
Okay, Kathy. What's the next amendment?
This is a little late to be asking this question, but do we have any idea how many people go to Polly Hill in a year?
If you look at Polly Hill's letter that they just filed, they say not that many.
I think it was
I thought it was
28.
26,000.
How much?
26,000, I think.
26,000?
And
But
established.
that gives us a feel because Polly Hill doesn't feel to me like there are
Busy?
lots of people coming and going. So I don't know. It just is a good, it's a good
Actually,
yeah.
their letter says the Arboretum hosts a total of 16 to 20,000 visitors a year. And I know that they do keep track of it.
And they say attendees possibly, oh no, I'm sorry, they're talking about something else there.
No, go ahead.
No, I was mistaken, never mind.
Okay.
So this is double that.
Yeah, but it's, it's a very different use. I mean, you go to Polly Hill, yes, they have classes and a few events. But most of the people who go there park their car and they walk around. That's what you do at a tree museum.
Can we procedurally at this point ask if the applicant has any specific problems with these numbers?
No, we can.
No, too bad.
What the applicant can do, though, is that if we finish land use planning post public hearing tonight, the written record will be open for 2 weeks.
So they can make a written argument to the full commission
they
before
can.
we decide. Okay, well, I just want to make sure that we haven't accidentally caused a problem.
Right. Well, they'll have an opportunity to tell us that.
Whether it's an accident or on purpose.
Right. Go ahead, Joan, and then I'd like to vote on this.
Okay, I'm a bit of a squeaky wheel. I'm sorry. Maybe not as squeaky as Brian, but squeaky. I think that if we're trying to be conservative to on day one say you can have up to 5 events a day, because I mean, that's hard to schedule, but I also think that 5 events in a day is a lot of in and outs. And I would be much happier if it was less than 5. I just think that, especially if we're starting out like conservative, that does not strike me as conservative. I don't care if it's 35 attendees, it's still a lot of in and out, sort of in and out constantly all day long. I would prefer a lower number.
I understand your thought there, but we have discussed and
Okay, I just making
no, but we've discussed and they have proposed and we seem to have been in favor of their hours of operation being 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying that I think it's a stretch for an early for the first few years of an operation, and I don't think it's a conservative number. That's all I'm
This is
saying.
a recommendation to the full commission, right?
That's all this is a record.
Yeah, so I think we should take a vote and move
I think we
along
will,
with
but
it.
I want to hear Fred's got his hand up and then we'll vote.
Yeah, I would just say to Joan's point, again, it's 35 attendees or fewer. That does, I know we're looking at the highest potential, but there could well be 4 of those meetings could be with 12 or 16 people or 20 people. So I don't think it's the big avalanche that you're thinking it is.
Okay, You can all see the motion. It's been massaged.
Alex, can you take down the thing?
But we're gonna vote. All in favor of recommending 1A as it was on the screen to the full commission. Raise your hand where Doug can see it. 1, 2, 3. Peter's 4.
4.
And that's all. Oh, Christina's 5.
Christina. Yeah.
Opposed, please raise your hand. Brian, Joan. Okay, there should have been an abstention. Is there an abstention?
Kathy.
He's abstaining? Okay, so it is 5,
2-1.
2 to 1. All right. I'm glad we got that done. Whether it'll stay that way or not, we'll see when we get 6 or 7 more cats in the room. Okay, let's, 1B, I think we got to have the green language because we got to know whether it's on mission or off mission. And yes, I know what's on mission and what off mission is really going to be, maybe parsing things.
And anything in green here was added or changed after the previous LUPC meeting.
Yeah, I would suggest that Alex go back and find the language on and off mission, on mission, because it was in an early version and it seemed to me to be relevant and it's probably good enough to take to the full commission.
Go ahead, Brian.
So what is the process if they give us these records and they don't meet the frequency that you just voted upon? We can't go out, to my knowledge, we can't go out and grab it, or can we? Don't we need to wait for a town board to refer it to us or ask them to get back to us for a modification?
No, I think if they submit records that show that they're clearly say if 1A ends up part of our decision and they submit records that show they are clearly violating 1A, they're in non-compliance. We can then address it the way we address other non-compliances. And whether or not that is addressed with a certificate of non-compliance or litigation or the applicant coming in for a modification, those are the only 3 options.
So what is our form of determining the events? Do they have to come back to us? I mean, do they lease each event? I mean, is there a document that's associated with every single event that they do that they have to present to us?
Well, we haven't discussed that, but in my mind, they would, for every event that occurs, they would tell us the number of people and who the sponsor was and what the activity was and what date it happened. And we would compile that and staff would look at it and look at the numbers and try to determine whether something is within their educational mission or is not.
They would provide us with like a, I don't know, a spreadsheet, kind of like a logbook of what's happened over those.
Or it could simply be a logbook of every day. If I were doing it, I'd have a logbook that I'd fill out every day.
You've just created a new job.
Yeah, that's it seems like a lot of work, but all right.
Peter?
Well, it occurs to me that they're going to have to keep those kind of records for the IRS anyway, if they want to keep their 501c3 status. So they're going to have to do a whole bunch of that reporting. So rather than creating an entire new job for our staff or theirs, if we can just get copies of their,
As long as it has that information, all they have to do is tell us what events happen each day and how many people were there and what the activity was. It's not that burdensome, really.
Who the sponsor was.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I was kidding about the job.
We've discussed this before.
Yeah, but I have a question about this. It says no amplified music. I thought we were talking about no outdoor amplification.
Yeah,
Not just
yeah, I thought it was no outdoor amplification. When did it get the amplified music, Alex? You know?
I'm not sure. The language was yeah, I'm not exactly sure when or how that got changed. You could change it now.
Yeah, I think my recollection is that it was no outdoor amplification. And that is consistent, by the way, with what the West Tisbury Planning Board said in its letter, that it would not support amplification of any kind, music or otherwise.
Outdoors.
Outdoors.
Yes.
Correct. Outdoors. Yes, Fred.
So what's in the green here, this really needs to be a figure above ambient, because the ambient noise level is going to change given the conditions during the year and what else is happening. So to set it at a predetermined level, what the applicants offer is more reasonable. I think the point would be whether we pick that dBA above ambient as 10 or 5. I think to me, those would be two good choices.
As long as the possible condition before the green is in, and if it's no greater than 5 above ambient, I could live with that.
And I think it's measured at the property boundary. Yeah.
Peter?
Boundaries, I think, is what we want to say.
Right.
It says any property boundary.
Yeah, that's true. It says any property boundary.
Okay, yeah.
Peter?
I'm okay with 2. I'm okay with 3 and 4. My question on number 5, does that allow for, the proverbial buy a ticket, you get a drink, or BYOB? What's the purpose here? We know that the town is going to give them a liquor license or not, but what is the purpose of number 5?
I think it was to try to put some cap on commercialization, but I don't know. That's a guess, really.
I mean, that's what most people do. Is if they want to get around that particular thing, is you buy a ticket, you get a drink. You're not selling alcohol. You're selling tickets and trading them.
Under those circumstances, do you still have to get a liquor license from if any liquor is served, you have to get a license from the town to do it?
Don't know.
Neither do I. My partner would know, but he's not here. Jake, are you wanting to clarify?
There was a question about how it became outdoor music. I think I can clarify that.
Okay.
So we had offered at one point no outdoor amplified music, and the reason we offered that was that for ADA accessibility, we have to be able to amplify speaking at any events we hold. So for instance, the grants that like one of our Native American collaborators has from the Justice Department require ADA accessibility, and that's why we didn't offer not to do all outdoor amplification. We just figured that having decibels above ambient at the boundary would take care of the level of amplification. So that's why we offered music and not all outdoor amplification.
Brian?
Yeah, I just want to let you know, I've got to go pick up my daughter at soccer, so I'll be leaving the meeting. So I think you can gladly jump in.
I think we could
do
fix
that.
it by saying, other than as may be required to comply with ADA requirements.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think it should be still no outdoor amplification of music.
Yes. No outdoor amplification.
Yeah.
Except as may be required.
Okay. And that would not cover, that could never cover music. Okay, that's fine then. All right. Anything further on this? Let's move on to, let's skip down. Any further comments about the sale of alcohol?
Yeah, but I have a question on number 4. It says, and this kind of goes to what is this DRI anyway? This is, I like 4 as far as it goes, but it doesn't cover, I mean, nothing covers I think it's lot 10, And is
10.
lot 10 before us in this? Is that part of, are we just, I mean, it seems to me that I don't know what's before us. And if lot 10 is before us, I don't think that we would want a overnight accommodation to the extent that it was associated with the activities at the barn.
They have
I
4
ju-
lots, 11 and 13. They have to have before us because they have to use them to get access to the barn and for parking. And 13 is the one that's right at the road where the land bank trailhead will be. Then we have, I believe, 9 and 10 are abutting, and one of them they wanted to have no conditions on because of the possibility of selling it.
Which I think is 10. And it's no overnight accommodations on 11. That's fine. And none on 10 if it's associated in any way with events offered on 11.
Yeah,
In other words, I don't think that.
Yeah, that would not affect its marketability.
No, and I don't think, I just think that we're not authorizing overnight tenting on 11 because we've never looked at that. So I think we should make it clear that that's not in, it doesn't mean they can't come back and ask for it. It's just not something we've ever considered as part of their request.
Fred?
I think if we're going to put in conditions for what might maybe happen at some time, we're going to be here an awfully long time. It seems to me that that's adding, I mean, nobody said anything about this being a campground. I just think that's, we're getting a little overstepping here.
I hear you, but is 411, they can do whatever they want. I mean, maybe it's still a residential only use. They just don't want to restrict it to that. I don't know whether overnight tenting applies. I don't know whether that is such a thing.
It was pointed out it was pointed out in one of the letters that the 411, I believe, is deed restricted to only allow for no more than 2 structures on the property.
That's correct. One of them is the barn, and
Yeah, but I wasn't really talking about that, but
I know
I mean, I hear your point, Fred. We're not going to start. I guess I would like somehow the record to reflect the fact that 410 is currently, as part of the residential subdivision, a residential use. And if it has some other use, that would require them to come back. And I guess I'll be willing to assume that overnight tenting is not a residential use.
right now, this subdivision, as approved, has covenants that prohibit tenting. The problem is
I'm happy.
those covenants, no, the problem is those covenants were recorded in 1988. And unless they were renewed before 30 years, they don't count anymore. They're dead. They're gone. So that's,
I don't think it's a huge thing, but I think that, they're talking about overnight retreats, and I forget, what is overnight? They can't do it on any of the lot, any of the property, whatever the property is.
We had a condition on that. It's
Yeah,
at the
it
end.
says no overnight on the property. I don't know what the property is.
I have an observation that I've been watching quietly. This seems to be an awful lot like when we were debating the pot situation in West Tisbury, and all the police are going to be called, and they've had to have all kind of this and that, and they're trying to second guess what was going to happen, and nothing happened. Okay, it's a very pleasant, quiet little business. There's 2 or 3 cars there, but all this we spent, I don't know how long. Well, what about how many customers can come in at one time, and how many people are going to check it? How many people do this and going to do that? I think we kind of got the cart before the horse here, because nobody really knows what's going to happen. Period. End of story.
and that's why we put conditions limiting it to by appointment only, so that we could see what was gonna happen. And then they came back and they asked for a modification, and we granted that modification so that anybody can go in now, once we learned what was going to happen.
Perhaps we should find out what West Tisbury regulations would. Apply.
My observation was just, there was so much conversation, we kept kicking it and kicking it and kicking it. Okay, it really had a very simple, let's see what happens, then they can come back or whatever else. But
Okay.
so I kinda,
Okay. Fred, you have your hand up?
I think that was a leftover.
Okay, good. Let's see if we can get moving, because it's 6:52 and we got to get this done by 7:30. I mean, enough already. I think 6 we've discussed. I think 7 we've discussed. Actually, we've discussed all of these before. Why don't we look at go beyond?
I just suggest that their suggestion that we don't say along the southern part of the access road is a good one, because it gives them the flexibility to come back with a plan and put the additional parking at the best place, considering abutting interests and their own interests. And we have a chance to look at it later. We shouldn't be short circuiting anything here.
That's a good point. Okay.
By the way, do you get a building permit here? Is that something that they get? I mean, they already have a building.
I'll look
They've
into
gotta-
that.
They've got to make some changes. They're gonna need a building permit because they're increasing the number of bathrooms, so they'll need it for that. I don't know what else they'll need it for. And they need a disposal works permit because they're gonna put in the need
Okay.
dehumidification system, and they probably need some kind of fancy permit to put in a public well. Is that right?
Yeah, so what if it says a permit from the town or something like that? And then we're kind of like,
Well, they need a building permit no matter what. Jake, go ahead.
I was just going to say that other drafts have said and referred to the certificate of occupancy, which we definitely need. So, but yeah, so I think that might be the most appropriate rather than the building permit.
Plan for the.
that's great, thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for that clarification. Could you change that to certificate of occupancy? Okay, we've been through 8 before. Let's see if we can get to the end of this and talk about benefits and detriments. Okay. We've discussed number 9. This is come back to us and tell us what your projection is for employee housing and what your plan is. And it may be that they don't have to provide any, it may be that they will have to come up with a plan. But they'll have to come back when they've been up and running for a while. 10, that was their offer, provided has been issued. I don't think we have to really get into what they're doing there. Water meter we've discussed. That's what our water planner wanted. Let's move down to 12. I think we're getting finally to okay.
I'm in favor of our wording on 12.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just think that asking you to collaborate is not necessarily an end game for us. So I think that ours is better. No doubt you will collaborate, and no doubt you will end up minimizing, but I think it's better the way we've worded it. And I don't have a problem with adding the word synthetic.
Yeah, they're asking for permission to put up to 60 vehicles there, a lot of which are going to be parked, heading towards the abutting properties. So they've got to address that. Okay, 13 is standard, 14 is standard.
Doug has, so 12 and 13, Polly Hill, in their latest letter asked if we would consider a condition to have the screening and for lighting
After a
come
year.
back after a year. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
they
then
said
what do we do?
Poly Hill
We're in the same
requests that,
position.
or Poly Hill requests that a review be conducted after a year of occupancy to gauge the effectiveness of the screening and lighting.
See, we're in the same position. Suppose it comes back and it's not. We don't like, what we have to make sure is that the burden is on the LUPC. When the LUPC looks at the landscaping plan and looks at it carefully, it's got, and Poly Hill will have a chance to comment. They have some expertise in the area. We need to be sure that what we are approving works, because if it doesn't work, it's on us, sadly.
And it
Right,
would-
and I think it's important that we are laying out what we expect what we want the landscaping to do.
Right.
So there's a clear directive.
And if they really want to minimize it, they'll put up a fence or they'll propose a fence. But I think this does cover it. Do we have anything after 14 or are we finally?
No, there's something, I'd like to add one word on 15.
Okay.
I think what I would like to say, it's sort of middle of it, currently proposed land bank trailer and parking and any increase in the number of approved parking spaces. That just time-wise chronology makes me happier.
Okay. And then Alex added number 16, which I recall actually Mr. Bennett said there would be no overnight residential use for large groups or or workshops. But I
thought we did talk about it, and Thomas might have said that. I don't see the harm. I just don't know what the property is. Is the property 411?
It would be the two lots that we're talking about here.
411 and 413.
Yeah.
Linda, you have your hand up.
Yes, I think it was you, Doug, who rather casually said something about it and blah, 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 they'll put up a fence. We don't want them to put up a fence that hasn't been approved.
Well,
I mean, they could put up something really hideous between themselves and Poly Hill. We don't want that.
You're absolutely right, and they have to come back and get our approval.
Okay, so don't just casually say they can put up a fence.
Part of the landscaping plan.
Yes.
That's all I meant, Linda.
It must be approved.
I was not clear enough. All I meant was that that is one of their options.
Yep, I realize that, but you made it sound just a little too casual.
I understand. Yes, Jake, what would you like to clarify?
I would like to clarify the question of whether Thomas said the thing
What
about
did he
no
say?
overnight. He may have said that he wasn't planning to do overnight retreats.
Yeah.
That is something that came in when I came in, because long-term, I would like us to come back to you and request that, because that's something that I would like to do with small groups. So that is how it came in.
Okay.
I think that's why I think that's exactly why it says without prior review and approval.
Yeah, so you'll be able to come back and ask for that.
Yeah, and that's great. I just wanted to say that Thomas may well have said that, because I may not have been on board at that point.
You were not present on the 20th. So that's fine, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so now we have
I have a question, Doug. Sorry. So some of these possible conditions specify all 4 of the Still Point lots. So for the overnight retreats, are we just focusing on 410 and 411?
I think I think all 4 of them are part of the application.
Well, why don't we simply say in connection with an event, a Still Point event? That way we don't need to worry about where the heck they are.
Right.
Anything further from this august body, or can we vote on a recommendation regarding the possible conditions through whatever it is, 16?
I'd like to move that we recommend to the full commission approval of this project, subject to the conditions that we've been beating to death tonight. You might want to word that differently, but you know what I mean.
Second that.
Okay. Do we do review of benefits and detriments first?
We probably should,
Yeah, okay.
because I am
Second.
moving that we recommend approval.
Yeah, we'll, yes, we will, your motion, if I understand it, is that if we recommend approval of the application, we would apply the conditions that we have just reviewed.
That will work.
Got it, guys? And that's what Fred was seconding, I'm quite sure. Okay, all in favor of that, kindly raise your hand where Doug can see it. 1, 2, 3. 4 is Christina. 5 is Peter. Okay. All opposed. Oh, wait. Tripp, did you vote in favor of that? Is that a plus? Is that a yes? Okay, that's a yes. That's 6 in favor. All opposed, kindly raise your hand where I can see it. Okay, I bet there are 2 abstentions. All abstaining, kindly raise your hand, Joan and Kathy. Okay, there we go. We got through part of this. Let's go through benefits and detriments.
Doug, may I make a suggestion about the benefits and detriments? I think it's a little awkward with this project to go through it as mechanically as we have been doing, nor does Chapter 831 require that. That is something that was adopted by the commission, I don't know, maybe halfway through my tenure on the commission. I think we should be able to do the benefits of the detriments more globally, given the nature of this project. Just my opinion.
Well, you know what we could do is we could put them up and I could ask commissioners if there's anything in the bullets that a commissioner thinks is accurate
Okay,
and appropriate.
but I really object to the mechanical way we go through it, as though benefits and detriments do not attach to the entirety of the project.
Okay. Alex, would you, I understand that, and what I'll do is, once we've determined whether or not anything needs to be changed in this for Alex's benefit, we will generally discuss benefits and detriments. Alex, did we identify anything that was primary? We do have to do that.
Yeah,
Open space.
those are in red: open space, traffic,
Yeah.
economic, social development, intensity of use,
Yep,
impact on abutters, and I think that's it.
that's it. Okay. I thought that on page 3, the last bullet before the traffic planner review, where it says, there you go. The applicant has stated has reached out to Poly Hill about shared use, but that Poly Hill would not allow that type of Poly Hill admission. You know, I think it would be better. I don't know that that's necessary at all. If anybody thinks it is, please speak up.
No.
Okay.
It's not necessary.
And also the bullet before that, the applicant is willing to provide an easement to the town. I'm not sure they're willing. I think they said they were willing to work with the town. Jake, what's the deal there? Are you willing to provide an easement? Because I don't want this in here if you're not.
You know, we haven't talked about this in a very long time. Can I check quickly?
Why don't you talk to your people and you can let us know in writing, okay? We'll make a note that may have to come out.
Okay, thanks.
If you're willing to collaborate with the town, that's different than providing an easement is you're saying, I'm going to give the town a property right on my property. So
Yeah, I think we'd better check on that one.
you better check on that. Okay, I'm trying to think. I think under according to the applicant, I think we go throw another one.
Where are we?
Keep going, keep scrolling. Under economic and social development, yeah, when it says restrictions that would apply, I think that should be restrictions proposed by the applicant that would apply.
I'm not seeing that where.
It's right below main usage category. Scroll on more, there you go.
Okay,
Because those aren't the restrictions that we would apply, as proposed by the applicant, yeah. And also, under open 7 AM to 10 PM, they have now told us that they're going to be closed 4 weeks a year. That is important in terms of the number of events and number of attendees. So that has to be part of their proposal that we would be approving.
In the section just above that, where it says outdoor amplification of music.
Yeah, well, that's their proposal, and that's not what we're adopting. I'm not even sure we need it in, but
we could just take this whole thing out.
yeah, I think,
Yeah, I think we should. It's confusing.
yeah, I think, yeah. Take that all out.
In which case, this should come out too, I think. Well, some of this should come out.
Yeah, the updated summary of events too is again, the applicant's proposed one, and it's significantly different than what we've discussed today. Yes, Jake?
I just wanted to clarify on the closing 4 weeks during the off season. We were doing that in terms of calculating the overall numbers, that we wouldn't be having all these small events or larger events, but that doesn't necessarily mean we wouldn't have some like one small event. So I don't want to commit it to being totally closed. It's just that we aren't going to be doing the kind of numbers we'd expected. So
Well,
it was more about the overall total in terms of our calculations.
that does change the overall total if you are doing anything in that time. So why don't you think about that and get some clarification?
Well, so what we were thinking is like at most 10 people, but that doesn't change when you're at 43,000. But like we're figuring we wouldn't go over 43,000 or 38,000 based on those 10 people. That's kind of how we were doing the numbers. But I'm not sure we want to commit to being completely closed for those 4 weeks.
Or what close to events?
Take it
'cause
out.
we define
Yeah.
event as 10 or more people. So we could say we close to events 4 weeks during the
Why don't we
off-season.
just delete it and it will be the whatever numbers we agree to, you'll have to accommodate in that. You can choose.
Exactly.
If we limited it to 38,000 attendees, then
You
Right.
figure it out.
Thank you.
okay. Do we need this summary of events since it's nothing like what we're going to do?
No.
Their proposals are in the record, so let's take it out.
Do you just want to swap their proposals in for there if we accept them?
Um,
Why the
Just so
record
we-
has to have.
I just don't think we
the
need it.
decision has to have it.
Okay.
It's not a fact which bears on the benefits and detriments. It's their proposal.
Okay, I think we can get down. I don't have anything until we get to impact on abutters. The third bullet is inaccurate because the plan's polyhealth staff housing was situated and the location was identified before this application was ever made. And two of the two staff houses that have been approved by DCR are already under construction.
Hey, Jim?
So I think you could take that out. And the last one says the immediate butters to the north have endorsed the project. I think it would be more accurate to say one of the immediate butters, because there are two immediate butters to the north. One has endorsed it and the other has raised concerns. So it would be one of the immediate butters to the north. Probably see, yeah. the last thing I have is under the
And I
item.
would say that if you're going to do that, in that case, it would seem to be only fair to indicate what the other abutter has to say about it. Is that?
Yep.
Yeah, well, then I don't know
I
that
think
we.
maybe we just take out the third bullet. Well,
Yes,
Which bullet are you taking out?
the one about the endorsing the project. I mean, we know it. They testified. We know what the other abutters said. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure that.
Well, we are looking at benefits and detriments, and that's one of each.
Yeah.
Uh,
I,
Okay, I think it's fine if you say one of the immediate abutters. Okay, anything else from commissioners about the way these are drafted? Because then I want to talk about benefits and detriments and see if we can get a vote.
Is there anything more you wanted to say on open space? Or-
Yes,
I did not have anything more on that.
Okay.
To Linda's point, perhaps it would make sense for someone to make a motion. And the motion would include a statement of let's assume the motion is to approve. That motion would include a brief summary of what that person determined the principal benefits were. We would not then, and detriments. We would not then have to go through any agonizing process.
Want to give that a shot, Linda?
Yes, I'd like to move that we recommend the full commission the approval of this project with the conditions that we have worked on tonight, because it provides a major community benefit of a facility for all kinds of public meetings. And in spite of the detriment, which is really traffic and noise in the location.
I'd like to second it, Linda, if you add an eloquent paragraph as you had earlier in the meeting about the preservation of open space. You know, this is similar to other projects we've seen, which is a combination of the open space is permanently preserved.
But this is
and
true.
There's people usage in parts of it. It's kind of a trade-off, but
People usage which respects and preserves open space. How about?
you're on a roll.
Something like
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Fred, you had your hand up then, John?
Yes, and I think as part of what Christina and Linda were saying, I think it is important to say that this modification includes the transfer to the land bank of a large portion of this subdivision, and that this project itself does not include any clearing of the land except whatever minor might be needed for parking.
Thank you, Fred.
Well,
I think
put.
that's very important.
All of that, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not at all sure that you're correct about the land bank part of it. That it really is, I don't believe that is part of this application. That's a done deal. That's a done deal, and it doesn't matter if we approve it or not.
Well, it's a modification of the existing subdivision.
I believe
it is, I believe it is part of this.
I view it as an important factor that the applicant was arguably instrumental and certainly very influential in.
Yeah.
I think we can call it a benefit of the overall project.
Clearly a benefit of the overall project, but I do not believe that the land bank is not an applicant, and the land bank is not here seeking a modification, and they are not part of this. But
That's not what Fred and I were saying.
But the
We're just saying
applicant's
that one of the
goal-
benefits of the project is it results in more land bank land.
It certainly
Yeah.
was an important off-site benefit. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I would like to note that what I would regard as a material detriment is the impact on abutting properties, and I don't mean neighbors per se. I mean the 2,000 plus acres of reasonably pristine agricultural and conservation land by the introduction of a reasonably high volume commercial activity in land which is not zoned for this. And
We just take out the word.
Well,
commercial.
let's not interrupt. Let's let.
you don't have to agree with me. That is what I think principal detriment of the
No.
proposal.
Okay, I agree. I just would like to say the rest of your wording was fine. There will be significant activities. There will be significant. I just didn't want the word commercial because I don't think it is commercial. And as the original mover, I wouldn't agree to that.
I don't
Yes.
think we're talking about the language of the motion. We're having a discussion on the merits of the motion. And
Okay, but I'm happy with her word.
We
Adding
don't have to
wording
use,
to the
we don't
motion.
have to use that word, but I think it's
Right.
crystal clear when you look at the zoning, that this
Yes.
is not a residential or an agricultural or conservation land
I
use.
agree. Just if we could avoid using the word commercial, because it's like business.
No,
I don't
yeah.
think it's any of those things. It's a
Suddenly,
community.
is Polly Hill commercial?
That's
Flashes
right.
to
Is
mind.
the Ag Society commercial?
Okay, let's not all talk at once, please. And we do usually call
Sorry, Doug.
people and then they speak and we listen to them and then we call on somebody else. Okay? And as we often say in my business, reasonable minds may differ regarding a point and a characterization of an activity.
No, but I'm accepting Joan's wording as a modification to my.
Yeah,
motion.
it's not. It's a comment on the merits of the motion. Kathy, it's your turn.
I just want to agree with Joan because when it comes to voting, I think it's helpful to know. I don't want to vote out of the blue. I think some of the changes that have been made have been really helpful, but it still doesn't feel to me quite pared down enough for me to feel, and I have to, you can say whatever you want. This is a nonprofit business. These are people coming and going. If it weren't a business, we wouldn't be caring whether there were certain numbers that were going to sustain it. It would just be like an open park of some kind. So I'm still not comfortable. I wish there were two phases here where we really started out and had a sense of the impact on the abutters. So I just wanted to say where I was coming from.
Okey doke. Any further comments from commissioners? Linda?
I would just, I don't want to get too argumentative with Kathy, but I would suggest that the abutters, which include, by the way, the people who live across the road and, the whole bunch, but mainly the abutters are conservation land. And I think that this is a usage which is non-harmful to that abutting conservation land. That's just my feeling.
But as Doug said, great minds can think not exactly the same way.
Actually, I said reasonable minds.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Oh, come on, we like the great minds, didn't we, Kathy?
Maybe the rest of you are great minds. I just try to be reasonable. That's what my job is. Okay, if there's nothing further on this, I mean, we do have another 9 minutes, or we could vote.
Move the motion.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, which is to approve this to recommend approving the application with the conditions that we have recommended. Because on balance, the benefits outweigh the detriments. That is the motion. This is a recommendation of the full commission, and we get to do this all over again in a few weeks.
Oh, whoa.
All in favor, kindly raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Peter, 6.
6.
All opposed, kindly raise your hand. All abstaining. Gotcha, ladies. Okay. 6 in favor, 2, no opposed, 2 abstentions.
So Doug, does the clock start now in the 2 weeks?
Clock starts, and we can do deliberation and decision after those 2 weeks are done.
Okay.
Have
Okay.
fun, John.
Alex will publicize the fact that there's 2 weeks and
Yeah.
we'll do that.
Okay, this
Okay.
was a lot of work. Thanks a lot, guys. I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
guys. Good night.
Thank you.